Hey everybody, welcome to another Audio Technology ISO booth. I've got Mark Lizotte on the line, aka Diesel. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Christopher.
So just to hop straight in to your fascination with the recording process, can I transport you back to the moment that you stepped into a commercial recording studio, and I guess what that made you? Can you recall what that was like, and what it made you feel?
Yeah, look, our first, was, I'd say, so kind of blurry because it was at the ABC studios in Perth on St. George's Terrace, and it was like 3 a.m.
Right.
And it was someone who'd said I've got the keys, we can sneak you in, we'll do some demos. And, we just done a gig or something, and it just all went pear-shaped, and the poor engineer didn't really know how to patch anything, and that was kind of like a big epic fail.
Right.
So really our first, when I say this was with the band before we'd made our first record, was here in Sydney when we went and did Live at the Wireless at Triple J when they had the studio on William Street.
Okay.
And it had the big old Quad 8 console.
Right.
And so that was kind of like our first demo, and our manager kind of cheekily kind of slipped that around to radio stations, and it was getting airplay and that weird hours of the morning and stuff. But yeah, we kind of jumped the gun, and then we went up to Rhino.
Right.
Again, kind of on a bit of a sort of look, this band's kind of. They've just come from Perth. They've got nothing. Okay, yeah. So they kind of let us slip in there and did some cheeky demos at a real bargain basement price. And we just went in there and played live and chopped out 6 songs, I think, in one day. And so that was my first experience of oh wow, listen to what we sound like with the SSL bus compressor. It makes it sound like we've been on the radio, And it was really just kind of and I remember asking the engineer, what did you do with that bass? It's really poked out. He's like, just put a bit of 200 on there, I was like, I'll remember that.
Yep.
And yeah, just hearing us all kind of coagulated, and in the box, and that's kind of an idea that I've kind of had that conversation with a lot of people about capturing, and basically, it sounds like a really dead obvious thing to say, but even with all the technology that we have now and different types of speakers and mediums and stuff, until there is something different, it's correct me if I'm wrong, but still, as an artist, your canvas is a left and a right speaker. Nowadays, shrunk into a Bluetooth blob, which is the left and right is kind of nebulous, but still, that's your medium, and whatever it is on externally that you're trying to get into that, whether it's the biggest guitar sound or the smallest guitar sound or the, biggest drum or the smallest drum, whatever it is, the sound of a massive choir, the sound of one voice really close to your face, you've got to make it translate into those speakers that, and sometimes, what you think is going to be the thing is not necessarily what is going to make it work in that realm. So, it's the challenge of any kind of person that's trying to record music is you've got this in one hand, and the other you've got these 2 speakers that are ultimately where the stuff ends up.
That's right. Yeah.
And that process for me is never I don't think I'll ever say, I know it now, got it, everybody, I know what I'm doing. It's ridiculous. But that first experience was for me was when I heard us not in a live gig situation, but shrunken down into a console and coming out of 2 NS10s and then the big JBL massive speakers that they had on the walls in that place. And it was, but I kind of was almost more I remember being very excited by hearing whatever song it is coming out, because I remember tape machines used to have a little monitoring speaker, and I'd always like to listen to it off that monitoring speaker, because it was the smallest, most belittling sort of what you hear a song, and if it was still translating, then you kind of think, yeah, we achieved.
Yeah, better than Orotone, but
yeah, exactly.
Harder to put on your meter bridge.
Totally.
So I guess at that point in time, in the early 90s, we were going to be sold this Project Studio dream, weren't we? It was like ADAT, 8-bus from Mackie, and it was like, this is pretty much all you need. And and we believed it, and we bought those things in droves. Can you remember piecing together your first home studio?
Yeah, my first home studio was in my house in Randwick. This was after I'd been on the world tour and done gotten to record at Air Studios in Oxford Street. The biggest Neve I probably will ever see in my lifetime, 72 channels of Battleship Blue 1073. Just drool over. The best Borsendorf piano that I've ever heard, and just a great sounding room and great people. Like David Nicholas was there.
Yep.
That's when I really got to know him and meet and work with him. And it was just an absolute A grade sort of like 5-star. I mean, we were floating the high, sailing the high seas. Just like, I mean, anything you do there. I mean, funny enough though, that was where I experimented with like a $50 tiny little Fender transistor amp and put rice in the speaker and recorded that to get like this fuzz because I heard people like slashing speakers and I wanted to try something like with rice, and it actually worked really well. But the best distortion, I'm digressing a little bit here, but
go for it.
I really wanted to hear what it sounds like to plug straight into the console, and that was David's idea. He was like, "Why don't you just plug straight into this thing?" And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, and we'll go through a few preamps and cascade it and just like absolutely just like destroy it." And that is probably the most beautiful, complex, but kind of brutally square wave thing I've ever heard. And it just kind of sputtered, and it was like, wow, you don't need valves,
you just need $1 million signal path.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, Rupert would be screaming if he heard what I did that day. But after that, I kind of the ADAT emerged, and suddenly it was like, you can get something that's not hissy and noisy for a couple of for around $1,000, and then you get the little Mackie desk. Everyone was getting those, and that's what I did. And I started, and I had a very simple MIDI setup running Cubase with a 165 PowerBook, and it was as much as I could handle it, because I still had horrible memories of studios where you go to like, okay, let's record everybody, and then the sync would fall over, and you'd have to call up the sync person, come and help us. We've got no sync.
Yep.
And MIDI was actually a real just a horrible thing if you made it complex. So I kept it really simple with one little Mark of the Unicorn box, a laptop, and it ran like as solid as a rock all the time. And we just kind of deal with the fact that I only had 8 tracks. And so when I moved to New York, I wanted to get a little bit more expanded and be able to record things that I could keep. So I went and bought 2 of the XT ADATs and a bigger Mackie and a few bits of outboard, and that kind of was the beginning of the record I ended up making with Jerry Harrison in San Francisco at the now defunct place called the Record Plant in Salsa. And I did all the demos for that record, Soul Lost Companion, in my little studio in New York. And after that,
can I just stop you there for a second? Like, in those early days, what were the key things that you realized you're going to really have to work extra hard to get close to the $1 million studio? Like, I'm just thinking, say even your vocals, like, can you remember those early experiments that you had to go through to try and approximate a proper release ready vocal?
I'm going to be honest. I hadn't had, at that point, we're talking 93, 94, I'd done a lot of looking over people's shoulders and asking a lot of questions, but I hadn't really engineered anything myself. So I went for like bonehead easy. I got a Summit Audio TLA whatever, which is basically like I guess similar to a LA2A. So being the fact that it's got gain and peak reduction, so not a lot of things to play with.
Yep.
I got a Groove Tubes tube mic, one of the early ones that were actually really good, and just kind of ran that through that. And this is before plugins, obviously, so I try to get like as much kind of vibe as I could on the way into the ADAT, and that was kind of like basically my MO was just kind of get good bits of gear and just kind of like things with not too many knobs that I could just get. I know I was going to get a good sound out of,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I interrupted you there, but what was the next kind of big, iteration of the studio?
Well, I guess after that, when I came back to live came back to live in Sydney again, I'd made that record in Sausalito that was my first Pro Tools record, and I could see that tape was kind of like something that it was kind of fading out of my kind of reality, and I actually really liked the sound of what I was hearing. And Jerry Harrison explained to me the whole where he'd come with Pro Tools, and he was one of the first people that were given stuff from the DigiDesign crew and had his friends in Silicon Valley and all that, and they gave him the first machines, and he said, look, he goes, I knew it didn't sound super great at that point, but he knew that the editing capabilities were going to get him a lot of work, basically, because he was working with a lot of Southern California SoCal punk bands with I hate to sound like a cliche, but with like drummers or rhythm sections that were kind of all over the place, and he needed to kind of like help him out a little bit. The live show was all vibe, but when you're making records, it's always getting like the microscope comes in, and so he could see the potential was massive, so he embraced it, and he put up with the lackluster converters at the beginning, and they quickly it went sort of like exponentially like through up quite quickly to the point of what the version that a lot of people like me own now, which is the Avid with the purple logo HD thing.
Yep.
I stopped. There was a certain point. The first rig I got when I got back was a 001, and I was like, this should do the job, and that was a learning curve for me. It did, but I quickly learned that for songs with about 8 elements, a vocal, a guitar, a couple of bits and pieces, it was fine. But as soon as you got complex, the roof that just caved in, and that really hurt my feelings, and I couldn't work out why. I also couldn't work out why, after all my experiences of sitting in a studio and playing an acoustic guitar through whatever mic and through whatever mic chain, doesn't really matter, but going to tape, acoustic guitar always sounded, good, basically. Like, David Briggs, Neil Young, Harvest kind of, that's the acoustic guitar, and I want to hear it every time. And suddenly it was like, this sounds like a bunch of nails in a glass jar going like that. And I realized that, again, cymbals and acoustic guitars with bad converters are just not friends.
Sure. Yep.
So I went to the 002, and then that was it. Then I just realized this is just going sideways. I got an Apogee ensemble, I think. Suddenly I heard, wow, nice converters. And that then I was like, okay, now I know, like, it's like I want the deluxe French fries. I don't just want the fast fries. I want the real, bespoke made potato chip and with the good oil and all that.
Sure, hand cut.
Yeah, the hand cut, exactly. And it's all about that. And so, but luckily my trajectory went right sort of in the same time as price, because when I looked into the HD thing, it was just so beyond like what I could afford at that time. I was like, there's no way I can do that. So I'm going to have to make this work. So I cut several, records with the 002, and I got good at getting around that ceiling issue. 7 tracks on Jimmy Barnes's Double Happiness, for instance, were all done on a 002.
Right.
And listen to them now, it's like, it's vibey. I can hear a little bit of crunchiness, but I think it's inherent in a lot of records made around that time. I think if you listen to all of, say, the Pretenders catalog, all the stuff that Chris Thomas did, all on tape, and then you get to that album that was done on the Pro Tools system around, I don't know, early 2000s, and suddenly it's like, wow, what happened to the snare drum? What happened to the vocal?
Yeah, that's right.
But listen to it now. I mean, I think we can stop having this argument now, and that's a really nice thing. I think anyone who has this conversation now, it's just like, I just glaze over. It's like, you know what? it's just what you put in now is what you get out.
Yeah, yeah. But it hasn't stopped your fascination with good conversion.
No, it hasn't. I mean, when I bought my HD rig, I got told by someone, it was just kind of one of those phone calls that just happened to come in from a friend of mine in New Jersey. And he said, "Oh, you're getting that?" He goes, "You should call this person." And I called them. It was the people at Black Lion. And I had a big, long conversation with them. And, I just spent X amount of dollars. And after the conversation, I was like, yeah, I want one of those too. So I bought a Sparrow. And I guess it's like, I hate to use the French fry thing again, but it's like adding an extra nice component to your meal after you've already bought a nice meal. And yeah, it clocks off that thing. And I've already got a clock in there, but this clock's just that little bit nicer. And that's all,
That's good. So could you, is a good opportunity now just to walk us through your studio? I'm kind of fascinated now. We've been looking at it for so long. It'd be nice to get it more of a guided tour. Hello.
So I've got, the usual suspects. Quest heads, I've went through a lot of Howard speakers and trying them out, I should say, and just I ended up back with these. They sound great when they're turned up.
Yep.
I don't love them turned down low, but that's not what they're for. They kind of get up in boogie speakers, and I actually love the smell that comes out of them too when their ports are really working. It's got this really kind of, I don't know what it is. It's like the smell of Quest head, but yeah, ubiquitous NS10s. It's been recombed, but they're actually from, I don't know, I would say late 80s, early 90s. It's when they put the MC after the 10.
Yeah.
And I've had them fused because, I'm kind of hoping I don't blow any more like tweeters or woofers with those. These little guys, I rate them as the best in the range of the whole HS range. I'm not a big fan of the big ones because they're really kind of tubby. But these little guys, HS5s, I call them like my industry kind of like, or consumer level sort of speaker, but that's actually a real derogatory thing to say because I think they punch pretty hard for what the price point is. And they sound, I hate to say it, they sound kind of in that NS10 range, but they've got some nice bottom end, which the NS10 just, as we all know, just doesn't have. They extend nicely down, and that's with the roll off kind of like, I do quite a severe roll off to get rid of all that. Yep. I find most powered speakers have just got way too much hype down the bottom end.
Yep.
So that's the speaker thing. And then this is probably the most important thing for me are the Brystons that I've got running. The Quest heads, which, again, for years I just would buy like kind of half decent power amps and wonder why it sounded sort of half decent. And then I went to the Brystons and went, well, what was I thinking before? And this here is something that a lot of people would know. It's called the DAT machine.
Is that a 24-bit DAT machine, or is it 16-bit?
It's a big guy. I think it does all different. Yeah, it's got all different. It goes 32, 48, and 40. Yeah, 48, 44, and 32.
Yeah. Okay. I think there was this really brief period where they tried to do 24-bit DAT, but hopefully. I think that it all died off before it became a thing. But, hello. Yeah, let's stop there.
Okay, so, the DAT, I should add, it's just because I've got drawers of DATs that occasionally I go dig and find.
It's an archive machine.
Yeah, I have to have it still. But I found it, I used to have the exact same machine and it died and no one could repair it. So I found one on eBay for $150 and I took a total punt. Plugged it in, works perfectly. I bought one of these Vintex when I was living in New York, and the guy down in Texas that makes these, he's a real he's probably like the biggest fan of Neve in the world. He's just such a fan of Neve. He does it in a real loving kind of he does it like there are many other clones out there at the moment, but he was one of the first to do it. And I think BAE do a really nice one too, and so does Heritage. But his are just like they're like American muscle car versions of the Neve. So I went in, boots and all, and bought a whole two more four channels. So I've got basically 9 channels of that stuff. The old TLA down the bottom. This is when TLA just started, and quite a big difference to what came out of there later, in my humble opinion. The old stuff is pretty different, and I like it. It's got tons of color. Use that on mostly like trash mics, as you can see.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been rebuilt by my sound guy Warwick Newman, who's a valve aficionado, and he put some nice tasty valves in there for me.
Cool.
The distressor I bought that was like the first two bits that I bought. I bought the Vintech X73 and the distressor because I'd been out in California working, and I thought I'm not sure exactly what the distressor kind of like. You can't say it's like this, it's like that. It does opto, it does like 1176 kind of, but I just thought one compressor for me at that time, I thought this would probably be the most like greatest hits of compressors box that I could have at the time. And it's been exactly that. It's been like it just when sometimes I think, I could probably get rid of that, and then I'll use it and I'll go, no, I'm not getting rid of that. So yeah, it's been one of those.
It's a genuine classic, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Classic,
I mean, it's become such a staple. Like, I don't know if I would like have a whole rack of them, like some people do, but I definitely appreciate having the one. Now this guy, I rave about this box to everybody because I'm sure people know Manly is a great company. I mean, but this ELOP, it's I kind of
angled down a bit. Awesome. Thanks.
I describe it like the ball boys or girls, for that matter, at a tennis match that run out and grab the ball and have to get back as quick as they can and not be seen. This thing does that with audio. It grabs like peaks and doesn't munch them, but just does it in such a smooth, beautiful way that it actually makes this sound a bit lumpy, which that's a terrible thing to say about this old classic. But this guy does it with almost like with intelligence.
Yep.
And it doesn't have any digital stuff in it, to my knowledge. It's just an updated version of that classic. Like, I want it to be compressed, but I don't want to destroy it, kind of thing.
Yep.
So, needless to say, it's my go-to for vocals, acoustic guitars, and sometimes electrics too, but definitely vocals and acoustic guitars, and bass too. It's great on bass.
Cool.
But
where
it's
transparency is required.
Yeah, but it just gives you a great platform, I find, as a starting point, it's like the factory that spits out the first bit of product, and then you do refinements to it later. With vocals, for instance, I never just compress it once, and that's like, oh, it's done. I get through that, and then I have 16 channels of I/O out the back of this guy. Yep. So I go on the way back. I go through one of these, which it's a $300 compressor, I think, maybe less, maybe more, but the old classic, great on a vocal to get it jumping, and then I smooth it out with this. That's my chain, like when I'm mixing it here. That guy and that guy.
Just take us back to the 500 rack. So you're talking about the DBX?
Yeah, the DBX 568,
Yep.
which is the modern version of the old box that I used to use lots. Like Het Fidelity, the sound of most of the guitars on that is two 160s, just going into each other, just like spit and then spit, kind of, and you get this real super like squishy, but with lots of attack and then sustain at the same time. It's a cool thing. I've showed that trick to like lots of people. Like, don't just stop with one compressor, use two. Yep. Yep. Yeah, cool. It's great that you can do things like that in the studio just by patching. These two guys, I like to use on my mix. The two SSL EQs. I've tried a lot of when I'm getting to the final stages of a mix. I like to put a little bit of sweetener on the mix bus, and it's really just to add a little harmonic kind of content. And again, like plugins, you can do it with a plugin, but these two, they just add that kind of, I don't know, I hate to say it, but that SSL sound. It just actually has a sound, and my ears recognize it, and I like it. It's what I grew up with. So
sure, it's the sound of every number one in the 1980s.
Almost. This thing, very kind of, it's a boring piece of gear, but I guess because it just does Bluetooth, but I can't tell you. Like
just shunt it a little bit right so we can see it. There we go. It's a bit more right. Sorry. There. Yep. Got it. Yeah.
So this little guy, I don't know if anyone's experienced the frustration of trying to get audio from a streaming service like Spotify to come into your studio and come through your monitors in a really effective way that you can trust. I find the converters on this are just so sweet that, yeah, like I really didn't like the sound of what I was hearing before coming out of the computer. When I got this thing, I was instantly, okay, now I want to use that as a reference. And that's when I'm mastering or mixing, I'd like to reference things off streaming platforms just to hear where I am in comparison to what other things are doing. And this has been a great thing for $200 and something. It's I can't tell you how important it is for me.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, super cool.
Awesome.
And then the Crane song, which is basically, the conversation we were having before about big consoles and all the switching and the beautiful routing that you could do. Well, now that our computers have sort of taken over so much of that, there was a big piece missing for me. And my engineer friend James Freeman just said, he goes, just get this. Like, it's expensive, but you will not regret it. And I can't say I've regretted 1 second, because it gives me plenty of inputs and outputs and does it beautifully without any loss. And it's got talk back. It's got, it's multi-layers. I mean, Dave Hill just, he does some amazing stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Just back off a little bit so people can see the Avocet just a little bit, because it was just a bit focused on the one corner. Oh, there we go. There it is in all its glory. Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
So, and then I've got like a few different flavors of micros, like the red down there, which is, I hope you can see that.
Yep.
The Chandler. This little guy made by I can never remember the name. Tone Deluxe.
Oh
yeah. It's a nice little version of the Telefunken preamp that used to kind of like drop in with a clip, and it's got some really sweet harmonic sort of tones to it. Some great little. It's also got a miniature sub miniature little tube in it.
Okay.
And then just, these little guys here, which,
cool.
I like to put this on my bass when I'm mixing, because, again, you put the plug in on and you go, okay, it's doing that. And then you sort of bounce, spit it out and put it through this. And it's always like, wow, plugins are great, but this thing is just like suddenly you go one click and it's like boom, wow, I can hear it. Nice.
Yeah, right. Do you have a patch bay, Mark, or do you just keep everything pretty much? You have favorites?
I just pretty much get around the back and go spaghetti.
Yep.
I've got lots of short cables, and I find that it's not a huge, like, it's about every time I set up for something, it's a good hour of patching, but that's like a whole drum kit and everything.
And I guess once you've done it, you have your favorites, and you know that's what you're going to be running your bass through, or the kick. Oh wow, you've got what a great live space. Awesome.
I'm really lucky. I mean, this was the office of a factory warehouse, and the glass window was actually already there. Someone sat in it, and like made phone calls. So I just went, okay, that'll be my control room. And I just kind of moved in my stuff and did a little bit of treatment. And my drummer, who's also an amazing carpenter, made these beautiful baffles for me. And then I saw that doco on the making of Michael Jackson's Bad, how they started making risers made out of plywood for everything, and it just really hyped up the sound. So that's what I did. We made a riser out of form ply, and it really kind of couples with the drums in a big fat way, but then it dissipates really quickly, so you end up with this really thick fat sound, but with the tightness as well.
Cool.
So
Wow.
And then my usual this is my box of crayons, I call it. So
that's awesome. I'm not much of a guitar geek myself, but I know that there'll be plenty of people watching this who are. So is there any gems there you want to just pick out?
Well, let's just start with the 66. This is a 66 Bard made by Epiphone, and it's 12 string. So big wide neck, so the strings don't like hit each other. They resonate really cleanly, and that's been I got Maton to actually make me a neck that was similar, so that they don't do that zhu thing that a lot of 12 strings do. This one actually sounds like 12 strings, not just like strings like clustered together.
Yep.
That, and then the 65 Country and Western, which is the first like nice guitar I bought, like a vintage, I should say, in a little shop in London when we were sound checking one day, and at the Borderline, and the sound check was going really slow, so I jumped out, and it was a little shop off Denmark Street, and ran in, grabbed it off the wall. It was like it spoke to me, and the guy thought I was crazy. He was like, "Are you buying that?" And I went, "Yeah," and I gave him my credit card. He was like, oh, okay, I better find a case for it. And that was that. I just knew that the guitar was for me.
Yeah.
So those two really complement each other. It's a funny thing. They're like brother and sister or something. So I a lot of guitar tracks where it calls for like two acoustics, it'll be just like those two. And it's like it's never like, oh, what was, that didn't work, like try something else. It always freaking works.
Yeah, reliable.
So in the end, just, this is the first vintage electric that I bought from a shop called Eastside Music on Bondi Road back in like 91 or something. It's a beat up telly that been stolen by some kids, and they scratched all these names into it.
Wow. And
it's the guitar that when I'm struggling with other electrics, I'll go and grab that, and then it'll just be like, okay, well I should have just grabbed that to start with, but so it's one of those. So
that's really cool.
And then my bass, which this is quite recent. It's a 66. I like things that are like 66, by the way. It's a Hofner with just one pickup, which normally I would be like, not sure that's going to work, but it's got everything you need, and in spades, and it's just it's a beautiful part of Hofner's heritage. Like that's before everything went kind of really mass produced, so it's got that made in Germany kind of made like a beautiful kind of classical instrument, because they made double basses too, back in the day.
Sure.
It's, So and then just kind of a few odd sort of folk instruments here. This is the first gift from my wife. I'm not even sure I think we're just married, and she bought me this beautiful 1930 Style O resonator, National. It doesn't have the logo on it, so I put the gorgeous little Hawaiian girl on there. But I was like, wow. I've really got a cool wife. She bought me a 1930 Style O.
She's a keeper.
And both have been keepers, so
it's really good. How's their mic collection, Mark?
I like things like this. I got this this is just an old dynamic which cost me about $60, I think. It was under $100, but it's an old Philips dynamic, and we really love it on the neck of the acoustic. And then we put one of these lollipops made by ADK, which it's got a 67 capsule in it. It's with a transformer. You can get them without transformers. I preferred the flavor of the transformer.
Yep.
And they're just like really great mics. This is my main vocal mic, the Cremona ADK. Again, I went through so many vocal mics, trying them out, that is, and tried this, that, Palusas, blah, 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 blah. And I was liking most of them, but it was something that I just wasn't hearing, and I got this and it was like, oh, there it is.
There's a lesson there, isn't there? You can struggle for years just with something that's not quite right, and it's not necessarily that it's a bad mic. It's just not kind of dovetailing with your voice quite right.
Yeah, it's that. But I mean, getting something that works on everyone is really hard. And so I when I tried out a bunch of things, I ended up going for some FETs as well. I got 2 FETs for overheads, and they have that nice tightness to them. They're like a 47, I believe. I love those on my overheads. And my newest favorite thing, given to me by my friend Jim Blackfoot, this thing's still got Trafalgar Studios
cool.
Written on it, and Radio Birdman used this one, along with everyone else probably from the 80s into the 90s. But it's an old SM7, and for a hi-hat, I've tried it so many different things. This has been my suddenly I can actually make friends with the hi-hat.
That's a good tip. I'm sure, like, everybody's got an SM7 now, so I can feel that there's going to be a stampede for putting them on hi-hats.
Well, just, and just pointing it kind of a little bit down like that, around that area. This old guy here, it's an old Shure Dynamic. I know a lot of people just go, oh, that's like a 57. It's like, well, yeah, it is shaped like a 57, but I've been told that the metal in these mics has more impurities, which is actually a good thing. The molds, the cast metal that they were using was just not as pure. The technology wasn't like it is now, and I can only say that we all know what it's like to put a 57 on a stand drum, and then I personally always go to grab, okay, I need some 5K and some 2K now. I need some crack, you know. This thing, I still end up EQing it a little bit, but just not as much. It just instantly has more openness and more vibe. I mean,
so like 57 on crack.
But basically, and you know, it's got an on and off switch, and you'd think because it's an older mic, it would sound kind of like more retro, but it actually sounds more open to me. It's amazing.
That's cool. So, that was just a Hail Mary. It was just a potluck purchase. My sound guy Warwick saw that someone was selling like 3 or 4 of them, and he said, "I'm grabbing you one." He goes, "I'm going to grab one," and I said, "Yeah." I mean, I'd heard about these mics, and I knew a lot of engineers swear by them, but you just don't see them come up that often, you know. So anyone that's looking, just like if you grab one, grab it. Yeah. What's it called? Do you know?
It's the Dyne. Let me see. It's a 545 SH.
Okay, cool.
Unidyne. The Unidyne 3. Unidyne 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. It's good. Wow, it's really cool to be able to wander around your studio, Mark.
No worries.
It's a fun
This is
place.
another cheap kind of, but really effective. Like, this is not the Bayer one. Is it the 180 that everyone sort of goes for? This is the 260.
M88.
Yeah, sorry, the M88. This is a Bayer.
Go a little bit right. There you go.
So it's a printed ribbon. So a ribbon, but slightly different design. A printed ribbon, and it definitely has its limits of SPL. I've tried it on the bass cabinet, and it didn't like that so much. But it handles the front of a kick drum beautifully. And it just gives me that nice mid-range, and there's just that sound of that printed ribbon, but with quite a tight, it's got a tight, what's the word? It's just, it's not like Omni, it's
got a sort of tight sort of pattern.
Yeah, tight pattern, thank you.
Yeah. Tight
pattern, quite a magical, mic, but not like one of their like most famous mics, but they're out there. And this thing again, it was, a couple of $100.
And what's that one called? Is there
a Bayer? It's a Bayer 260, M260.
Can you just give us another look at it?
Sure.
Just come around a bit more. There you go. Yeah, right. Yeah, cool. Nice one.
Really cool logo.
It's very retro. So would you use that with another double mic or?
Yes,
Yep.
I've got the ubiquitous Beta 91.
Just come around a bit more. So just there you go. There we go. Yep.
Yeah, the Beta 91. It's really important to have it on top of a 1970s Star Wars bed sheet as well. Which, if I could be bothered, I'd take out and show you. But it's got Chewbacca and everybody on there.
I'll take your word for it. But yeah.
But
original merch.
Totally. That thing, I wasn't a big fan of the version before, and it actually died anyway on the road. But I got this one, and boy, they made some really, in my, opinion, made some really good improvements to this mic the second time around. So the Beta one, it was like, this is better. The better preamp for starters. And it's never given me any trouble. And it's just, once you get the positioning right, you get that nice big bottom with a bit of click on top. It's kind of a little spoopy sounding, and that's where the Bayer comes in and just fills in the picture, and you're done.
Yep. Yep, cool. And
Yeah.
is that where you would position the Bayer? That's pretty much where you.
Pretty much, yeah. Like a slight little angle like
Yep.
that, and not
Yep.
too close, so it's not getting like too much kind of energy, you know.
Yep. Yep.
And then I've got this. Yeah, I love this guy. It's a 19. It's very old. I don't know exactly how old, but I'd say it's mid to late 60s.
66, perhaps.
Maybe, could be. But it's the first version of the SVT 8x10.
Yeah, wow, look at that.
And all of these are like separate little boxes. So it's not just like a big baffle with speakers stuck chucked in. It's actually eight separate boxes.
Yeah.
But just the ply that they used back then, and it's doesn't have any slant, or they call it non-towel rack. So it's a little less deep, but it just doesn't. This box sounds good with any head that you put on it. I mean, I literally mean any head. It doesn't really matter. The box has got so much sound.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I guess we should talk about some guitar amps. I mean, I'm a big fan of the deluxe kind of design. So my friend George Dahlstrom, who's actually the brother to Kai Dahlstrom, who runs Sing Sing down in Melbourne.
Yep.
He makes these cool little amps that are like 2 6v6 valves, and this one's a tremolo version, which is really cool, and makes beautiful little cabinets out of Queensland rock maple. And then I put a blue El Nico Celestion in the back, the blue Bulldog, and this one's got a 10-inch Jensen. I like 10 inches as well. So most of the time I'm running these two deluxes with a 112 and 110 just to get a different flavor. And then I've got this guy, which is I mean, I would love to own a vintage Marshall quad box, but if anyone wants a really good, well-made quad box at a good price, you can't go past these EVH quad boxes. It's just as far as like how the box sounds, a really good sounding box. And that's what I use with my 50-watt Marshall that you might have seen in there.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I'm a big fan of just a nice, classic Marshall sound. It's just sound. That and box, for me, are my two favorite flavors. Of course, with the aforementioned Fender Deluxe, those are the three food groups for me. The spanky sort of Fender sound, the chimey mid-range heavy box, and then it just bolts to the wall Marshall. That's it. Three food groups.
Yeah. So you don't have a drawers full of pedals and
yeah, I do. I've got a lot of. I keep just a stash of pedals on the ground here. This is made by Gray at Earth Audio. It's a really, really beautiful sounding overdrive. Not a super high gain thing, but it's just got incredible.
Can you just point it down a bit, Mark? There we go.
It's called the Bear.
Right.
And that's kind of like just a great. It goes really nice with the deluxes actually, and this BG fuzz. It's just a vintage Roland fuzz, which is kind of like a big muff, but just more like a swarm of angry bees coming at you, and that's a lot of fun. And just I'm constantly finding this freak out thing. I'm not sure exactly what it is. It's supposed to add like frequencies, like basically like feedback coming out, but it's more like a reversed EBO to me. So I'm a real big fan of EBO, and I've done a lot of EBO stuff over the years, but this is kind of like a different kind of flavor of EBO, and I like to throw it with a POG, to add some like just different textures and keyboard sounds, and a Deja vibe. Got to have one of those.
Let's point it down again a bit for us.
Got to have a Deja vibe.
Yeah.
And then this, again, probably a boring pedal for a lot of people, but I can't tell you how important it is to have a really good amp. When you're using two amps or two of anything, you need a proper box that's like properly made, isolated well with a ground lift and runs off power, and that you're not going to suck any sound at all, because you can go out and buy a $20 amp switcher, but it will absolutely ruin it'll ruin the party.
Yep.
So just don't cut corners on that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then everyone needs a Jane Birkin single cover.
Look at that. It's perfect.
So that's pretty much
it's good, man.
but that's a lot of my studio.
That's awesome. Hey, regrettably, our time is up.
No worries. I'm glad we got Jane Birkin, so that's good.
It's a fitting end. But thanks so much for your time and contributing. It's going to be fascinating. People will love that tour. So thanks so much for giving your time.
Really look forward to people kind of letting people in through the doors. I'm really excited about that.